Adolfo Garcia, a Marine who has served for 20 years and was deployed twice to Afghanistan. Air Force Captain Kristen Franke participated in the tour and said, "This is amazing. I just want to say that I'm proud to serve after 8 years of active duty. 9/11 is the reason that I joined." The mere presence of so many of our nation's heroes makes one of our country's most sacred places that much more special. In further appreciation of the sacrifices our servicemen and women make and how deeply so many of them feel connected to us, we also acknowledge them on days like Independence Day by providing thousands of American flags to place in tribute throughout the memorial. Seeing the flags adorn the nearly 3,000 names inscribed in bronze is both a tribute to those individual lives and a reminder of the outpouring of patriotism that we saw in the days following the attacks. Over the summer, this past summer, we started a new program to commemorate the 2,983 people killed in the 9/11 and 1993 attacks. Each morning, memorial staff honors those whose birthdays fell on that day by placing a white rose on their name. There are individuals with birthdays every day of the year, including two today: David Scott Agnes and Pamela Lee Gaff. The birthday roses have become another way to personalize our remembrance and for our visitors to learn more about those who perished. As I've said before at this forum, commemoration will always be at the heart of our mission. But the second half of our mission is equally important, and that's education. It is through the 9/11 Memorial Museum that we fulfill this sacred obligation to educate so that we can uphold our collective promise to never forget. As we get closer to the opening in spring of 2014, it's been exciting and deeply moving to see the museum take shape. In the months leading up to the opening, we'll be sharing more information with family members, first responders, survivors, and others about plans for the museum opening and the special opportunities that you'll have to visit. As you know, the museum will be free to 9/11 family members, and there will be time every single week, 52 weeks a year, for the public to enter free through free public hours. We want to facilitate access as much as possible, and it's my belief that everyone in the world at one point in their lives should visit the 9/11 Museum. There will be also other occasions for privileged access for those of you so close to the history of 9/11, and we'll be sharing more information about this in the coming months. We look forward to sharing this historic institution with all of you whose stories it will preserve for generations to come. I'm going to turn it over to Alice now, who will give an update on the museum's progress. But before I do, I want to extend our gratitude one more time for all of your contributions to the museum. So many 9/11 family members, friends, and colleagues have entrusted us with invaluable artifacts that will help tell our story of remembrance and resilience, including photographs, stories, and mementos. And a lot of that path was paved by the work of Mary and Frank, helping us form relationships with the 9/11 community. It's probably the biggest gift that they've been able to give to us. It's really been amazing. The museum, and by extension, your input and contributions will touch millions of people every single year. It will serve as a living tribute to the innocent loved ones who perished that day. It will be a reminder of our responsibilities as citizens of the freest society on earth, and it will reflect the limitless compassion that we have for one another when the times require. It's now my pleasure to introduce Alice Greenwald, Director of the Memorial Museum.
Good morning. Thank you, Joe. As always, it's an honor to be here with you today, and I want to extend my thanks, many thanks to Mary and Frank for extending this privilege and opportunity to us year after year. Today and tomorrow are very much about focusing on the past, about remembering. But commemorations are also times to think about the future. In that spirit, I want to share some of the tremendous momentum that we are seeing right now with the effort to build and open the Memorial Museum. And in a way, this is a kind of special access moment for you. Most of the world does not get to see this, so we feel your family and you get to see. So during the past few months, we've seen the museum transformed as a number of very, very large artifacts have been installed in their final and permanent placements. The spaces are taking shape at bedrock exactly as envisioned in our design renderings. And here you're looking at some of the amazing construction crew getting ready to mount an enormous piece of what we call impact steel. This is a piece of steel from the north side of the North Tower, Tower 1, that was directly below where Flight 11 entered the building. And that's how it looks in the rendering, and that is how it looks in the museum in place. Another example is in the historical exhibition where we have a very large piece of trident steel. This is the section that deals with the recovery at Ground Zero, the 9 months. And in this section we have the trident steel, we have the World Trade Center cross, we have a grappler claw that you can see over there, several other pieces of large steel, some symbol steel with the icons of various religious faith traditions as well as skylines of New York that the iron workers used their acetylene torches to create as mementos for other recovery workers as well as for family members who visited the site. And here is yet another piece of, 2 pieces of World Trade Center steel. This is from an earlier segment of the historical exhibition that deals with the events of the day and the collapses of these 2 110-story towers. The large vertical piece is a piece of window facade, and the curved piece is a piece of structural steel that was forced into this U shape, almost a horseshoe, not by heat, but by the sheer force of the collapse. Very powerful stuff. Well, another milestone happened just a few weeks ago, and that it was the first time since May 2002 that the last column had been seen at the World Trade Center site, uncovered from its protective enclosure. And there it was, covered with the ephemera and notes that had been affixed to its surfaces by recovery workers, first responders, volunteers, and others, in remembrance of those who had perished on 9/11. It was thrilling. I can't tell you how thrilling it was to see that uncovered. You know, it had been in the box ever since it was brought to the site in 2009, and really, I had only ever seen it myself personally horizontal when it was at the hangar and it was being cared for by the conservators, and to see it 37 feet high standing up with all of that ephemera, you know, it brought home the fact that this is going to be an incredibly emotional and powerful experience of seeing it in the museum. We're also beginning to preview, we're not just putting the large artifacts in, we're actually beginning to put the exhibitry into the museum. And we've begun to preview on site some of the media installations, and I can't tell you how exciting that is. One example is in the 3rd part of the historic exhibition, where we do address the recovery. It's the slide you just saw, the rendering here. We talk about the recovery effort at the World Trade Center site. And as you can see in the rendering, there's a kind of an image on the face of the trident steel. We have thought for a long time that wouldn't it be cool, wouldn't it be interesting to project film footage of the recovery, of recovery workers at the site, directly onto that piece of remnant trident steel that you saw a few minutes ago in the slide of the large artifact installations. Well, just 2 weeks ago, we did a mock-up of that display, and I must say it was nothing less than breathtaking. You can see here, these are some stills of it, directly onto the trident. So as you can imagine, you're standing in the museum, you're listening to the voices of recovery workers, and you're watching something.
We stayed there as long as we could. I told everybody that they had to go because the intention was to use the heavy equipment to move steel.
I can only tell you that the experience of seeing this was as if the trident itself were sharing its own memories. And in so many ways, that will be the experience in this museum. It will be a place where history is personal. What we're doing right now is not just installing these artifacts, we're preparing to let them tell their stories. The museum's exhibitions will be filled with materials that people like you have entrusted to us so that we can tell those stories, your stories. Many of you in this room have provided us with precious objects and memorabilia that enable us to tell the story of your loved ones and to recount the events in the aftermath of the 9/11 and the February 1993 attacks. As you know from our preview 1 year ago of In Memoriam, the planned memorial exhibition, which we actually had set up in this room, we will be featuring photographs, personal effects, and recorded remembrances as the heart and soul of the memorial exhibition. And here you're seeing the touchscreen tables and the inner chamber profiles that will be projected. This exhibition is literally being built with the materials families have provided to us. And the beauty of this exhibition design is that we can continue to add content even after the museum opens. So for those of you who have not felt ready yet to record a remembrance, and we understand that, it will come when you're ready, we can continue to do that, and we can add to this exhibit indefinitely once the museum is open. But it's not just the memorial exhibition that will present objects and memories made available to us through the generosity of family members, first responders, and survivors. The historical exhibition, too, is filled with objects that speak. So, in closing, as a kind of preview of what's to come, I want to show you this short video, which features a sampling of the kinds of objects we will share in the museum. All museums tell their stories with artifacts, and our artifacts are specific to the story that we are telling, which is about 9/11. So on the one hand, we have monumental scale artifacts, the remnants of the steel that was part of the structure of the World Trade Center, and these are really, really big artifacts. The other is the intensely personal nature of some of the smaller artifacts, the intimate artifacts, the personal effects items that family members of some of the people killed have entrusted to us.
And there's no media installation, there's no storytelling or program that we can put on that is more powerful than an artifact that represents people. And whether it's someone who was lost that day, or a first responder that rushed into the building, or a survivor who escaped, this museum's power is derived from the artifacts that we house.
He was a very humble man, but from what I hear, everyone wanted to work with him or be just like him. And he would lead his guys, you know. He would definitely be there, and he saved a lot of people more than now. And he just reminded us of the real people that were there. They're not just a name.
We feel blessed that we're among those that got some of our loved ones' remains back. I know there are lots of families that weren't blessed in that way. I'm thinking he used to have a wristband. I'm thinking he used to have a wrist. It was there, you know, it was there.
One day I was sitting in church, and I just had like an epiphany, and I was like, if you don't write this down right now, you're gonna forget this. And for some reason, I had in my head the floor plan of, I believe it's the 77th floor is what I did for them, so that they could see how we got out, you know, like where the stairs were and how things were situated. Everybody died on that floor. And I was the last person to talk to. So that floor in particular was important for me to get it right.
people forget, though 3,000 people died, that was the greatest rescue operation ever. We got thousands of other people out that day, you know, and for them to remember the first responders is more important that the world see this than it sits in my closet for me to look at every now and then. It was actually the only thing I had left out off my uniform because the paramedics had cut my uniform up. And it was difficult for me actually to, quote, give these up, if you would. But again, I was hoping that, you know, the significance of what it means to me would maybe rub off on somebody else when they saw it. You know, they could see, you know the expression walking around with my boots.
There's just no way the story could be told without actually seeing artifacts.
My name is Mary Fetchett, and I know many of you in the audience here, and I just want to commend Alice and Joe for the work that they've done, and their team. I see Jan and others, Ryan Falling here, that have worked so diligently and been steadfast in making sure that this memorial is what it should be, both to honor the people that died, but also to tell these important stories of survival. We have this year, we have interns every year, and this year some of our high school interns were just 5 years old on 9/11. And so it's through their work and capturing some of those stories and working with families and rescue workers that they're learning about 9/11 through the eyes of and through the voices of the people that survived. And so, the memorial was certainly and is magnificent and a wonderful place to go and reflect and honor. But this museum is going to stand the test of time, and that's why it's so important. Our work is so important, working with the families and rescue workers and survivors to capture those stories, to honor the people that died. I think we have over 70,000 images that we've transferred. It's a daunting task, I guess, over the years, but we did it in the way that we thought it should be done, and that's to support the people that are providing those precious photographs and personal keepsakes, and to give them the support that they need, for the long term. And so it's been such a privilege then to work with the museum and collaborate with them to streamline the process for you all, and to recognize that we didn't get over it in the first month or the first year, but we've become a patchwork quilt of families and rescue workers and survivors and people like Joe and Alice and Ryan that have supported the community in so many ways. So I just wanted to thank everybody for coming today, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask questions of Alice and Joe, and then I'll wrap up and just remind people of logistics afterwards.
Hi, my name is Solange. I was at the site from January to April of 2002. I heard in the news last week that they're going to charge a fee to get into the museum. You said earlier it was going to be free. So what's going on with the...
So for 9/11 family members, there will be no admissions charge ever. We are going to charge the general visitor to the museum, but we were going to have hours every week, a block of hours. We haven't determined which day, where the general public or anyone can come for free. So for most of the time there will be a charge, but there will be specific hours every week of the year that will be free hours.
I understand the family members. I totally, what about the responders and those of us who need that place to go to? Is there also...
We're working on some sort of special access to the museum, programs like that for first responders and recovery workers, and as we get closer to the opening of the museum, we'll communicate communicate that and roll that out. But we realized that, it's such an important community of folks that gave so much that there needs to be some sort of acknowledgement of that in the museum.
And where do we give our, like if we want to tell our story, where would we go right now, today?
9/11memorial.org. There's information about, and we are still collecting those stories and information. We're creating a registry for all the folks that worked on the pile for so long, and there's lots of information, but it's very important for us to capture all the stories. So if you go to the website, you'll see an ability to do
We
that.
also have a booth right outside this door, and museum staff members are going to be at the booth. You can sign up a sheet, but they will get back to you with information. You can ask them questions.
And what about a live interview like you have already? Is that still happening as well?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
So, excuse me, so you're putting together a set of metrics to figure out who exactly was working there, and who was operating it and running things, right?
Exactly.
Because I was one of the people who came up with the idea of the badges at Ground Zero.
Excellent.
There were 4 original badges: blue, white, red, and then we had another white badge with a different kind of logo. The reason we did that was because there were so many people wandering around the site, and we needed to control people. So a lot of people still have those badges. I certainly have a couple saying, for my children, my children. But I think it's really important that you don't just say, well, we're going to set aside a block of hours. It shouldn't be that way. As a person who was working down the pile and recovering body parts and so forth, we shouldn't have to ask you or beg you to go into the museum on a certain block of time. There should be a metric that says, here's a badge we'll give you, and if you want, we'll give you a donation if you ask for a donation, but we should be able to go there anytime, I really hope you take that into consideration.
Yes.
Here, here.
Thank you.
And I think you'll see in the museum itself that the story of that period of time is something that it's an incredibly important part, and we take it very seriously. I think that another thing that we started which reflects that is that we are specifically making May 30th every year. We're trying to really make this a global recognition of all that work that was done on the pile. So I think the substance of the museum will reflect how important we take it, and we will certainly think about your suggestion.
But to make it a more holistic approach, what I think you should do, what you should do is you should come up with a plan where those people are easily identified in the crowd if they want to be, and people who are visiting the museum can then ask them questions. Oh, you were here, sir. You were here, man. What did you do? So that it's more of an interactive visit than just looking at pictures. I'm not saying just, I
understand. It's a great idea.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So somebody can look at me and say, as uncomfortable as it is for me to be here today,
Yeah,
because I haven't been here. I don't like coming here.
I understand.
I'm a former soldier, I got a hard heart, but sometimes, and there's other things. For example, you've got a meeting with some of the people who are inside here, some of the people who are there. Things like, for example, and I'd love to talk to you guys about personally. I had a lady older lady, who managed to filter her way down to me, and my job was it was very strange. I was kind of like a coordinator, getting people into the site that we needed with certain skills, and I don't know what I did. There was 1,000 things I did. I worked 23 hours a day, 7 days a week. I slept on the ground at Ground Zero with a poncho over me, and we did a lot of great things. But this one lady was pushed down to me by a lieutenant in the Army Reserve, and Patty said, this lady would like to go into Ground Zero. We're actually in Ground Zero, but not right in the center. And the reason was that she was dressed in black, and she was a lovely, lovely woman. I'll never forget, it haunts me. She said, she held my hand and she said, sir, she said, I lost my 28-year-old son and my 24-year-old daughter. They were having breakfast. And she said, I would like permission. I said, ma'am, you don't have to ask permission from me. You don't ask, because nobody here owes you anything. You should be able to walk down there, with an escort so you don't get hurt at any time. And we made that happen for her. And she came back and she thanked me profusely. It was tough. I haven't seen her since. I'd love to see her. I hope she's still alive. I dealt with all of those kinds of people, lots of people like that. I dealt with the rescue people from Mexico City. I dealt with people from Australia who flew over at Qantas Airlines, brought their skills. Those are the stories that have to be told.
Yes, have you ever done an oral history?
Say again, ma'am?
Have you ever done an oral history interview?
No, I haven't. No.
We love for you.
I steer clear of the place, to be honest.
But it sounds like you've got a story to tell. We
I
would love to.
Actually, there's a book. I've done a book too, and I want to get the book into the museum. Awesome.
Excellent, excellent. But one of our staff members will be speaking to you, I think, immediately after this.
How do we get our cross out of that basement back up onto the site?
Yes, how do we?
That cross was a big symbol for us because no matter where you were on the site, you could see the cross. And for us Christians, you know, and a lot of the people there were Christians, Catholics, firemen, you know, police officers, law enforcement, and so forth. That cross has got to come back out of that basement, or whatever floor it is.
And the code of spirit.
The cross is an important, hugely important part of the
I
museum.
understand it's a tough question, I mean, but.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer it directly that it's going to stay where it is. And for us, it's so important to help tell the story of the recovery period. And we're being sued by the American Atheists to get the cross out of the museum, but we could not have more respect for that artifact and the cross, and we're going to help tell your exact story. So it might not be where you guys, certain folks want it, other people definitely want it there, but I can promise you that it is a hugely important aspect of the story, and every, you know, millions of visitors every year will see that cross and understand the story. But I definitely appreciate all your perspectives
What
on
about
that.
the sphere?
The sphere, it's out of our hands. The Port Authority of New York, New Jersey has made a commitment to, at some point, return the sphere somewhere on the 16-acre site, on the World Trade Center site, and it hasn't happened yet. But again, we think it's very, very important, and I'm looking forward to it coming back somewhere on the site.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Several
You're
years,
next.
several years ago, I was notified about doing the StoryCorps thing.
Yes.
Now, is that something that will be at the museum?
So the story.
Is that the same
Yes.
as
Yes.
the
Yes.
story, the oral story history? What is that?
Yes, StoryCorps, we are using the asset of the StoryCorps interviews in the memorial exhibition in partnership with StoryCorps, so that we use excerpts from those interviews where people are remembered. But we will have a dedicated booth in the museum to use for StoryCorps interviews going forward. We have 3 recording booths. One of them will be used on a regular schedule, yet to be determined, for StoryCorps interviews. So that project will continue. The goal, as it was 7 years ago, is to have at least one interview for every person who was killed. And we are well over a third at this point.
And that will be available there? I mean,
Yes.
no, not even doing the history, but the ones that we've already recorded will be there?
Yes.
Okay. And will there be, before the museum opens to the public, will there be a time for family members to go prior to that? Or will it open to the public and us?
We're still working that out, but it's certainly, we are committed to getting that figured out. We understand that for family members and others, the notion of somehow being able to see it before the general public is key. We haven't quite figured it out, but we understand its importance. Sir?
Yeah, grew up over in Hoboken, all right, down in Baltimore, come up each year for this because when I would come up to visit my mom each year and see the towers coming up, I can't make that turn from Newark Airport up to the thing, not see the towers anymore and not be enraged. I can't any more strongly agree with this gentleman who said, for those responders, they shouldn't be coming in hat in hand, right? No disrespect meant to anybody who died, family members who were working there, but we need to generate a continued honoring of folks who voluntarily, after the fact, came down. There should be no differentiation between someone who lost somebody and somebody who responded. I'm a psychiatric nurse. I work for the VA. I work with our warriors who come in now from Iraq and Afghanistan and who have to beg at times for services that they were promised through our government. Our voluntary agencies should not be putting people as second-class citizens.
I understand.
Do you have, how much, I just want to be
Yeah,
cognizant
we
of
have
your
to
time.
leave in a minute.
Yeah. Do you want, just one more question, maybe somebody that hasn't asked?
I'd like to ask a
Okay,
question.
sorry, go ahead.
My name's Carlina Silviero, and my role in 9/11 was as a photojournalist. I'm a contributor to the museum with photos. And I got to ground zero on my powerboat from Maricopa. And when I was talking to the museum curatorial staff, I asked what plans the museum had to document the maritime aspect of 9/11, which is the boat lift,
Sure.
the emergency ferries, and the rubble removal. And about 2 years ago, they didn't have a clear plan for this. And I said I was actually very, very concerned because that story is really just generally not told.
Right.
And it's significant not only to 9/11, I would say it's also very significant to New York City understanding how to do big disaster response things, the important role of water. And I've dedicated myself to getting that story out. And I also curated an exhibit in our nonprofit that I now run on the 10th anniversary that was about the maritime response time. So what are you guys doing about
I'm
that?
happy to answer that question. It's wonderful to meet you face to face because I know your name. We have a number of your photographs planned for exhibition, and we're really honored to do so, to present them. There will be a section in the events of the day portion of the historical exhibition that is about the waterborne evacuation out of Lower Manhattan. It was the largest waterborne evacuation in New York City history. And that will be documented.
Excuse me,
Pardon?
500,000 people in 9 hours. The world's history, not New York City.
So we will be showing that in imagery. Ian is here. Do we know if one of her photos is in that section?
Yes, I think actually 2 of them.
2 of them. 2 of your photos are in that section of the exhibit. So we are covering it.
No, but the other aspects, because the rubble removal was done by water. And so the last, personally, the marine industry, I'm going to speak for them now, felt very overlooked with the last column ceremony, the removal of the last column, because it was trucked out. That allowed the city to see the column leaving, all of the rubble left by water. So the marine industry, which figured out how to get it out, and had the marine industry, had it not been removed by water, the estimates were it was going to take 2 years to clear the pile, and it took 8 months. So I said to the museum over and over again, it's a tripartite story. It's not only evacuation on the day of, it's an emergency ferry network that went on for 2 years, and it's rubble removal. So have you done the other 2 parts, or just the evacuation?
We do the use of the barges to remove the rubble. That's absolutely in the exhibit. There's actually a map that shows the barge route. I don't believe that we cover the other, but we will.
Yeah, because in the
look
longer
into
term
that.
perspective, that was a change in network of ferries that went on for 2 years. Because
Thank you.
downtown transportation was wiped out in terms of mass transit, so the waterfront was really important.
Well, thank you. And I want to say, the museum is planning a special exhibitions program after we open. We won't open with a temporary exhibition because there'll be so much to see for the first time. But we will have a changing exhibition program. And the whole point of that is to look at the information that can only be covered this deep in a large exhibition, to look at it more closely in a smaller, more focused exhibition. And that's a perfect topic for that kind of program. So thank you for that.
Alice, now you will have staff out here that's available for any other questions. I want to thank you again so much for coming, and I just want to reiterate that Voices of September 11th is committed for the long term in preserving the Living Memorial Project and working with the museum. With your permission, we've been able to transfer over all the photographs. If you haven't given us your permission slip, anyone in the audience here, our staff is available out here. Certainly, probably Debbie and Stephanie would be the best people to talk to. We're actually going to be launching a new website. Shortly, we'll have the first version in the next couple of months, and then before the museum is opening, a portion of the photographs that we've shared with the museum is actually going to be in the exhibit. But what they're going to do is connect to our website. So for the larger collection of photographs and so forth. So we're going to be calling on the families to really have you involved in that process to make sure that we have now tagged the photographs so we know when it was taken, who was in the photographs, and this is really going to become, we're going to be caring for it, but it's really going to be the family's project. And I think this will really help the museum. The second thing I wanted to mention just briefly is we've been working 2 years putting together best practices because we've developed now a model for working with families and survivors for the long term. So we did extensive research. We went to Oklahoma City, Virginia Tech, Northern Illinois University, and most recently Tucson, and then looked at the kinds of programs that you've asked for over the last 12 years. Again, we're going to be, we're supposed to launch it in September, but there's a delay with the Department of Justice, who gave us a grant for that work. And we'll be, we're not going to stop our 9/11 work. That's going to be the core of what we're doing, but we also feel a responsibility to help other communities like Newtown, like Boston, like the Sikh Temple, that have the challenges and no roadmap to really how do they support a community that's been impacted. So I'll be in touch with all of you to become involved in that project. So just as a reminder, there's 2 restaurants downstairs. You can have lunch. At 1 o'clock, there's a medical update from the World Trade Center Health Program, and I want to thank NYOSH for supporting this conference. Today, we'll have Lori Breyer, Terry Miles, Sheila Smith, and Annie Locke. And then in the far room, I'm going to ask the families and survivors to sit with us and let's just have a conversation about what do we see as the unmet needs moving forward, because the meeting that we had this morning was so enlightening to have families, actually someone here for the first time that lost her boyfriend on 9/11, so we really need to hear from you. And then at 2 o'clock we have the breathing and meditation workshop. Alice and Joe, maybe you want to attend that. So, and that's Dr. Richard Brown. And then we'll have a little coffee break at 3:30. We're going to have 2 authors come and talk about their books, Battle for Ground Zero and We're Not Leaving. So thank you again for coming, and we hope that you'll have a quick lunch and be back up with us here at 1 o'clock. Thank you.